Lawmakers are moving closer to having electric ratepayers subsidize 2 nuclear power plants in northern Ohio. It's the so-called First Energy bailout bill that would reward energy producers that do not produce carbon emissions. The surcharge would generate $300 million a year. Half of that would go to the Perry and the Davis-Besse plants. It would also scrap current state energy mandates that require Ohio generate more and more of its power from renewable sources. It would cost residential customers $2.50 a month, but that would be negated, they say, by dropping other fees. Every Ohio electric customer would pay, not just the ones who get their power from First Energy. Joe Ingles, this has been proposed before. The difference is House Speaker Larry Householder supports it. Will it pass this time? What are the odds?
Well, he does support it, and he's explained, basically that this is the way that they should move forward, that they should get rid of the green energy standards that they had in the past, and that this would be the way to, he thinks, save First Energy Solutions, those 2 nuclear power plants up in different areas of the state north of us. And the idea is to bring this forward and try to get the support for it. But the problem is that you're talking about a specific area of the state that's affected by these 2 nuclear power plants, number one. So the jobs there, that they're not affecting people Columbus and South. And the second thing is that you're talking about a power plant. You're talking about also maybe in some way there's a way that you could actually have coal-fired power plants being able to come in and get some of that money. The environmentalists don't like this plan. It doesn't have a lot of support from a lot of Democrats, and there are a lot of questions about it because there are still a lot of things that we don't know about it. But First Energy says if they don't do something, if the lawmakers don't do something soon, that these plants are going under.
Brittany, should we be subsidizing unprofitable, aging power plants?
For me, it doesn't pass the smell test of a bailout. So from what we've seen, First Energy generates about 14% of the electricity for Ohio, and this bill proposed essentially gives them $150 million a year, which is half of the revenue generated from this surcharge that everyone in Ohio would face. So it doesn't seem to make sense. The numbers don't really seem to make sense. And I think if you really wanted a clean energy bill, it would level the playing field for other clean energy sources such as solar and wind to help bring them in instead of kind of throwing a bunch of money at something that is bankrupt and not running efficiently, which is probably why in the past when a similar issue came up, it was not passed.
Derek, one of your clients is a renewable energy company, so we should say that off the start. But are nuke plants renewable energy sources? I mean, they're clean in that they don't do emissions, but they leave behind that waste that lasts hundreds of years.
Yeah, they do leave behind waste. This is a very controversial issue, as you know. I mean, on one hand, we got 2 aging plants that really need to be shut down, to be quite honest. But the communities that they leave behind, if those plants are shut down, will create havoc in those communities. So that's where the controversy really comes in. First Energy Solutions is clearly the winner in this bill if it passes in its current form. They would get estimated $150 million to save these 2 plants. But the question is, should the taxpayers pay for that, or for that or not?
So you must be very knowledgeable on this whole renewable energy stuff. Would it be better for renewable energy companies to get this money in this bill, or the current mandates that say you have to have 12% of the state's energy from renewable sources by 2027? Which is better for those companies right now? Well,
I mean, in the short term, if this bill passes, it's estimated that it'll generate close to about $600 million for this fund, right? So, if 150 is going to First Energy and First Energy Solutions, and then you got another, 400 and some change that's going to other renewable companies, then it could be a win. It could be a win-win. But again, the question is, should taxpayers be paying for this?
Would they expand like solar farms and wind farms and things like that with that money?
All types of renewable energy.
The energy mandates, Joe, they always come up. They come up every single year. We need to freeze them. We need to get rid of them. We need to kill them back. And then you can see why only 3% of the state's energy now is from renewable sources because of this uncertainty.
Right, right, and they've been scaling these back. You know, at the State House, they have been pulling back on these, and there's still talk about let's pull back further, let's pull back further. But you know what is happening in the marketplace? If we look at the marketplace, we have a lot of people who are demanding more fuel efficiency. They're demanding more solar panels and more of these clean energy solutions. So, you know, the marketplace doesn't exactly match what we see at the State House sometimes.
Yeah, and the only thing I was gonna add to that is, you know, retail competition creates a win-win for the consumer, because the more competition that you have, you know, the prices will be more manageable for the consumers across the state.
Brittany, that's one of First Energy's arguments, is that, yeah, they only make up a certain percentage of the grid, but they are a sizable portion of the grid. And if you eliminate nuclear power from that equation, then the risk of uncertainty grows if you rely too much on coal or oil or natural gas or even solar or wind.
That is one of the arguments they've made. But I also think, which has been pretty heavily reported on but hasn't been brought up, is the amount of campaign donations that First Energy has made and the amount of money that they have spent lobbying for this. You could say maybe, I think one of the estimates I read was $1.5 million into campaign donations, and they're tracking how it's distributed, and you could kind of say that's really questionable.
Yes, a lot of it went to Larry Householder and his campaign, and also to Governor DeWine as well. We don't get that much wind or sun in the wintertime, especially here in Ohio. Is solar energy and wind energy a real viable alternative, as it is in other states like, say, California, where there's a lot of sun, or Oklahoma, where there's a lot of wind?
Yeah, I mean, those states are always going to have the advantage because it's sunny most of the time in California and windy in Oklahoma. But when you start looking at the northwestern part of the state, there's a lot of flat, well, Ohio's flat, period, yeah, but a lot of flatter land there. Then wind could definitely be a good source of alternative energy.